They say after 40 years of marriage, you know someone better than they know themselves. You know the way they breathe when they're lying, the twitch in their eye when they're nervous. You even know when their silence says more than their words. That's what got me started on this road, I think, the silence. I'm Ruth, 66, born and raised in Temple, Texas. I've got strong bones, a soft heart, and a long memory. 40 years married to the same man, Dale. The kind of man folks around town would call dependable. Never missed a church Sunday or a tire rotation. Wore the same aftershave since '85. He was never flashy, but he was steady, like the tick of an old clock. But that clock started ticking differently last spring. Now, mind you, I ain't the suspicious type. I don't snoop. Never felt the need to. Marriage is built on trust. But the thing about trust is it's like china. Once there's a crack, even if you glue it, it's never quite the same. That morning, the morning of our 40th wedding anniversary, I got up early. I always do. I like my quiet time before the world gets loud. I sat out back on the porch with my Bible and my coffee, just watching the sky change colors. We were supposed to have dinner reservations at this little steakhouse Dale liked. Nothing fancy, just the two of us. 40 years. It felt heavy in a good way, like a badge. He came outside later, sat beside me with his own cup. He was whistling a tune I didn't recognize, but his shoulders were tense, like someone trying to act normal. That's when I noticed it. His mug. See, Dale always takes cream in his coffee. 2 spoons of sugar. Always. Even on mornings we argued. Even when we buried his mama. But that morning, black. I said, "You forget the cream?" He blinked like he'd just been caught stealing cookies. Oh yeah, I guess I did. Didn't even notice. But I noticed. Later that afternoon, I went inside to make another pot. We were both sitting in the kitchen, me by the window, him flipping through the newspaper. He always reads the obituaries first. Says it reminds him he's still alive. I set our mugs on the counter like I always do, his with the chip on the handle, mine with the blue flower. I turned my back to get the sugar and cream, but something in my gut told me to pause, just for a beat, and I saw it, out the corner of my eye as clear as daylight. He reached into his pocket, took something out, tiny like a capsule, and dropped it in the mug. My mug. He stirred it slow, real careful like. Then he turned and smiled at me. "Here you go, honey," he said, pushing the cup toward me like nothing happened. I looked at him, really looked. My heart didn't race. I didn't scream. I just reached for the cup, said thank you, and took a sip. Except I didn't. I had already switched our mugs. I sat across from him at that little 2-seater table we'd had since 1987. It creaked a little when he shifted in his chair, same as it always had. But now, even the creak felt suspicious. Dale took that first sip, same mug he thought he'd fixed for me. He didn't even blink. Didn't taste anything off, apparently, which only made me more unsettled. Whatever he dropped in that cup, it wasn't something you'd taste. I stared at him while he drank it, pretending to read the mail. The edges of my hands trembled slightly, but not out of fear, out of restraint, out of the fight it took not to stand up and scream. What did you just try to do to me? But I didn't, because I've learned something in 66 years, especially as a woman. Sometimes your silence holds more power than your outrage. Sometimes, if you wait just long enough, people tell on themselves. 10 minutes went by, then 20. He kept sipping, casual, like nothing was wrong. Then he started rubbing the back of his neck. Another 5 minutes, and he was sweating. I mean, really sweating. A bead rolled down the side of his temple, and I watched him try to pass it off like he was just hot, in a room that was barely 70 degrees. He stood up suddenly, wobbled just slightly, reached for the counter to steady himself. "Think I'm going to go lay down for a bit," he mumbled, trying to keep it together. "Headache?" I asked, not lifting my eyes from the mail. I could see him glance at me, trying to figure out if I knew. "Yeah," he said. "Probably didn't eat enough this morning." He disappeared down the hallway. I waited, gave it a minute. Then I followed, quietly. He was in the bathroom with the door cracked. I could see the light through the gap, hear the cabinet drawers sliding open. His movements were frantic now, like someone searching for something they couldn't quite name. Then I heard the sound gagging. Sharp. Ugly. He didn't know I was standing just outside that door, watching. A few seconds later, the toilet flushed, and he leaned over the sink, rinsing his mouth. His reflection in the mirror met mine through the crack. He froze. I didn't move. "Everything okay in there, Dale?" I asked, calm as sweet tea on a Sunday afternoon. He looked like a man who'd just seen a ghost and wasn't sure if it was coming closer. "Yeah," he said, clearing his throat. "Just maybe food poisoning or something." Strange," I said. "You haven't eaten anything I didn't eat, except the coffee." That was the first time his eyes really gave it away, big and wide and trying hard not to blink. "Coffee?" he asked, voice high-pitched. "You poured it for me, remember? Thought that was sweet of you." He nodded. "Too fast." But I continued slowly. "I accidentally grabbed your cup by mistake. Funny how that happens, huh?" I let that hang in the air like a humid Texas storm cloud. Then I smiled. "Don't worry. I'm sure whatever you put in there wasn't that strong, right?" I turned and walked away, and the silence that followed, it was the kind that screams. I didn't bring it up again that day. Not the coffee, not the sweating, not the fact that he didn't touch his dinner. I served him pot roast, just like he liked it, slow cooked with rosemary and red potatoes, but his fork barely scraped the plate. He kept sneaking glances at me like I might say something, like I might explode. But I didn't. I just smiled, like the wife he thought I was. He went to bed early that night. I heard him tossing and turning. Didn't sleep a wink myself. I stayed in my chair by the window, blanket around my shoulders, thinking, replaying the moment his hand slipped into his pocket, the way his voice cracked in the bathroom. Why? Why would he do that? We didn't have the perfect marriage, but we were steady, or so I thought. Then, like a light flickering back on in a storm, I started remembering things. Little oddities that hadn't felt strange at the time, but now they screamed at me, like how he'd suddenly gotten so into privacy these past few months, changing the password on his phone twice, locking the drawer in his workshop when he'd never done that in 40 years, staying out late and claiming it was poker with the boys, except his breath didn't smell like beer or cigars. It smelled like mint and aftershave. And then there was her, Cassie, my cousin, my baby cousin, if I'm being honest. 20 years younger than me. Grew up more like a niece. Her mama died young, and I sort of took her under my wing when she was little. She used to spend summers with us. I'd teach her to sew, let her help me bake. She even called Dale Uncle Dale when she was a girl. But lately, she'd been visiting again. More and more. She claimed she was checking in on family. Stayed a night here, a weekend there. Always cheerful, always bubbly. Too bubbly now that I look back. And Dale? He'd light up when she arrived like a man seeing the sun after months of rain. I chalked it up to nostalgia. Thought maybe she reminded him of easier days. But 3 weeks before the coffee incident, she'd stopped coming around. Suddenly, No call, no text. Just vanished. I had texted her twice. Nothing. Left a voicemail. Still nothing. I remember I asked Dale if he'd heard from her. He said she'd messaged him once, said she was busy traveling for work. But I'd never known Cassie to go off the grid like that, especially not with me. That night, lying in bed while he snored beside me like nothing had happened, I stared at the ceiling and whispered a question out loud, just to see how it tasted. Was it her? The idea made my stomach churn, but the more I thought about it, the more the pieces clicked. The looks between them, the way they both seemed to vanish at the same time, like a magician's act, except I was the only one left clapping. I needed answers, but I didn't want confrontation. I wanted proof, and I had a way to get it. The morning after the coffee incident, I woke early again like always. Only this time, I wasn't looking at the sky. I was scrolling through Dale's tablet while he was still snoring in the bedroom. I felt a little guilty, sure, but after 40 years and after what I'd seen, I needed to know the truth for myself. That quiet little voice inside me told me I deserved it. It wasn't hard to find what I was looking for, not if you know where to look. There was a folder titled Trips and a series of text messages between Dale and someone saved under a name I didn't recognize. Casual, flirty, too familiar. I clicked it open, and there she was. Cassie, not the bubbly cousin who used to bake pies with me, not the sweet girl who once cried because she lost her first kitten. No, this Cassie was someone else. She called him baby. He called her my sunshine. And in those messages, there were plans, secret meetings, late-night dinners, whispered promises. I read it all and felt something freeze in my chest. I wasn't surprised. I was angry, yes, but mostly I was sad, like a deep, aching sadness that settles in your bones. The worst part, they'd been seeing each other for months. Months. I put the tablet down and sat with the weight of it all. The betrayal, the lies, the careful planning that had led to that coffee trick that morning in the kitchen. I realized then that the coffee wasn't just about getting rid of me. It was about control, about finishing something he'd started but thought he could hide. But I wasn't going anywhere. I had a plan too. That day I started subtly, nothing too obvious. I invited Cassie over for lunch, just the two of us, under the pretense of wanting to catch up. I wanted to see her, face to face, and hear her side. When she arrived, she smiled that same sweet smile she always had. But I saw the hesitation in her eyes when she looked at me. Over sandwiches and iced tea, I kept the conversation light. Asked about her job, her travels, the new guy she'd mentioned on the phone. And then I asked about Dale. She stiffened. Dale, she said too quickly. What about him? I took a breath and said quietly, I know. She dropped the napkin, eyes wide. You don't understand, Ruth. I understand more than you think, I said. But this isn't about anger. It's about choices. She looked at me, and for a moment, the years between us seemed to disappear. She looked like my baby cousin again, the one I'd protected. I can't do this anymore, she whispered. I can't keep sneaking around. It's tearing me apart. I nodded. Then tell him that. She looked down, then back up with tears in her eyes. He says he'll leave you, she said softly. He wants to. And just like that, the pieces clicked again. That's why the coffee. But he underestimated one thing. Me. Dale walked in through the front door, just after 6, the same way he always did. Like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't cracked wide open between us. But I was already waiting in the living room, calm, centered, tired, but not broken. He gave a little smile when he saw me, that phony half-grin he wore when he was trying to act like everything was normal. I didn't return it. "Sit," I said quietly. His brow furrowed. "Ruth, I said sit." He did. I reached for the manila envelope sitting on the coffee table. I placed it down in front of him like a card dealer placing the final hand. "Open it." He hesitated, then pulled it open. One by one, he started pulling out the photos, pictures I'd taken of the coffee mugs that morning, the residue I found in the sink after he thought I'd taken the last sip, the text messages I'd printed from his tablet, the screenshots, the receipts for hotel stays, the time-stamped GPS records, every little betrayal laid out in perfect, damning order. He didn't say a word. He just sat there, jaw tight, face pale. "I saw what you did," I finally said. "You poured something into my cup. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I was too old, too slow, too trusting." I leaned in, my voice steady, but I switched the mugs, and I watched you drink every last drop of what you intended for me. He opened his mouth. "I didn't." "Oh, save it, Dale. You didn't think you'd have to explain anything. You thought I'd just get sick or pass out or lose my senses. Just enough for you to get rid of me clean and easy. Maybe take the house, marry your little sunshine, and ride off into your retirement fantasy while I faded away." I stood up, walked to the hallway, and returned with a small overnight bag. I placed it gently beside him. "That's yours. It's got enough in there for a few days. You'll find a toothbrush, 2 shirts, and the car keys. You can go stay wherever you've been sneaking off to with Cassie." His eyes widened, and I saw it. Not love, not regret, just fear. Fear that the game was up and the prize had slipped right through his hands. "I don't want you in my house anymore. And I damn sure don't want you in my bed," I said, voice cracking now. "You can come back for your things later. I'll have them boxed." He stood up, trying to regain his ground, his voice suddenly softer, pleading. "Ruth, we can talk this through. Please. 40 years, it's a long time." "Yes," I said, "it is. 40 years of sacrifice, of patience, of making excuses for you even when I saw the signs. But I'm not making excuses anymore. This ends here, and it ends on my terms." I walked to the door and opened it wide. He stood still for a long moment, and then, seeing that I wasn't bluffing, he picked up the bag and walked out without another word. I closed the door behind him, locked it, and then I slid down to the floor. I didn't cry right away. I just sat there, staring at the wood grain of that door, feeling the silence press in like 1,000 bricks. And then it came, all of it, the sobs, the weight, the grief, not just for the betrayal, not just for Cassie or the poison in the coffee. I wept for the life I gave to a man who didn't cherish it, for the years I spent making a home, standing by his side, never imagining that one day I'd have to protect myself from him. I cried for the woman I used to be, and for the woman I was becoming now, because I knew, even in the middle of that heartbreak, that I was finally free, and that freedom, it would carry me into whatever came next.